guys, it's Kayla from Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary here. All this week we've been talking about different animal life cycles and the different ways that animals come into the world, whether it's being hatched from an egg or giving live birth, and how different animals grow and change from a little baby to a grown-up. So today we're going to talk about the life cycle of, you've probably guessed it, a frog. Now, a frog is a type of animal called an amphibian. And amphibians are classified in a few ways by some different features. They have wet or slimy skin, and they do lay eggs. But amphibian eggs are different from the eggs of an animal like a reptile or a bird, which have an actual shell. So we talked before in our video about birds that bird eggs have a hard shell, like this little parrot egg that I have here. I've also got the egg of a reptile here, a crocodile egg, which also has a hard shell, but reptile eggs can sometimes have a soft, leathery shell, like a turtle's egg. So these are shelled eggs. Frog eggs are very different. We call them frog spawn, and they don't actually have a shell at all. They look like, almost like little bubbles or little blobs of clear jelly, and there's hundreds of them together in a little blob. They kind of look a bit like this, like a little blob of bubbles. And they have to be laid in the water. So in or very, very close to the water. The mama frog will lay those eggs, and then what do you think hatches from frog spawn? Does a full frog hatch out, or maybe something a little bit different? Well, actually hatches into a tiny little tadpole. So the tadpole lives in the water, and it doesn't have any arms or legs. So how do you think it moves about in the water without arms or legs? The tail, that's right. It uses its tail to swim, and it has gills so that it can breathe underwater like a fish. Now, when the little tadpole is swimming around in the water, what do you think it's going to eat? Well, I know that frogs like to eat bugs, but I think the little tadpole might be a little small for that, and it's also living in the water, underwater, where there's not many bugs. So, tadpoles actually start out their lives eating plants. So little algae or slimy plants that might grow in the pond or wherever the little tadpole's living, in a creek, that's the first food that the tadpole eats. So they start out their lives as a herbivore or a plant eater. And it's also pretty handy because they can hide in the plants. So it gives them protection and food. But then the little tadpole will start to change. It will start to grow and get bigger and stronger, and eventually it will start to grow some different features. The first thing that the tadpole will grow are the back legs. So it still has the tail, but do you think the tail's getting bigger or smaller? The tail will start to shrink, and it will form little back legs, which it will start to use to kick a little bit to start moving. Then the next phase, it has its back legs, and it will next grow little front legs. And at this stage, it's what we call a froglet, which basically looks like a little small frog with arms and legs, but it still does have a bit of a tail, and it's still going to be spending most of its time in the water. But then, once that tail disappears, the gills go away and it grows lungs to be able to breathe out of the water. So the frog will leave the water, and then it won't eat plants anymore. So instead of eating plants, the frog will switch food, and it'll start eating bugs and insects. Things like flies, but not just flies, beetles, spiders, basically whatever it can get will be on the menu. So it'll go from eating plants to meat. So it will switch from a herbivore to a carnivore. And we always think about frogs eating bugs, but did you know that some frogs can get so big that they can even eat things like little lizards or even little mice? Pretty amazing. Now, of course, once the frog is big enough, then it can go and lay its own eggs if it is a female. And then those eggs will grow into a frog, which will lay eggs, and it goes around and around, which we call a life cycle. All right, hatchers and growers in training, we have been learning all about different animal life cycles, learning about which animals lay eggs and which give birth to live young. And I reckon you are ready for a challenge and to play a bit of a game. So, for this game, you will need a piece of paper and something to write with. So make sure you've got a pen or a pencil handy. You can pause the video and go and round up your supplies because you're going to need to write down some answers and also keep track of your points. So this is a game with points, okay? So for this game, I'm going to show you some pictures of animals and you need to guess whether you think the animal is a mammal, a bird, a reptile, or an amphibian, and also whether it's an animal that lays eggs or gives birth to live young. So you'll have to write 2 answers for each picture, and there might even be some bonus points available. So for each correct answer, you can give yourself a point. All right, are you ready to go? I think so. Mystery animal number 1. We have an emu. So, is this a bird, a mammal, a reptile, or an amphibian? And would it lay eggs or give birth to live young? Give you a little bit of time to think about it. You can also pause the video if you need more time. Have a bit of a think. In 3, 2, 1. So an emu is a bird. Even though it doesn't fly, it is a flightless bird. It's the second largest bird in the world. It does have feathers, and all birds, big and small, lay eggs. So an emu is an egg-laying bird. Their eggs are really cool. They're very big. They're about the equivalent of 10 to 12 chicken eggs, and they're bright blue, and the dads look after them, but they are an egg-laying animal. So there was animal number 1, an emu, which was an egg-laying bird. Are you ready for animal number 2? All right, number 2, we've got a frog. This happens to be a splendid or magnificent tree frog. So have a think. Is it a reptile, bird, mammal, or amphibian? And then egg-laying or live birth? All right, in 3, 2, 1, the correct answer is that a frog is an amphibian. And amphibians are an egg-laying animal. Their eggs are quite different from a bird egg because they don't have a shell. They look like a little blob of jelly with a little black dot inside. But they are in fact eggs. We call frog eggs frog spawn, and they're an amphibian. So give yourself 2 points if you got both of those answers correct. Okay, moving on to number 3. And because it's our third, you can possibly get 3 points for this one. So our third animal is a kangaroo. So let me know if you think this is a reptile, bird, mammal, or amphibian, if it gives birth to live young or lays eggs, and an extra bonus point if you remember the special type of mammal. I'll give you a clue. A kangaroo is a mammal where the females have a pouch and they give birth to a really small baby called a joey. Have a think. Remember, you can pause the video if you need more time. I'll go ahead and tell you the answer. So a kangaroo is a mammal. So 1 point if you said mammal, extra point if you knew that it was a type of mammal called a marsupial, and then a 3rd point if you said that this animal gives birth to live young. So kangaroos do not lay eggs, they give birth to live young. Great job if you got all 3 of those. Next one, we've got, a snake. So, what type of animal is a snake? What group does it belong to? And do you think it lays eggs or gives birth to live young? This one could be a little bit of a tricky one. So have a think. This is an inland taipan, by the way. All right. In 3, 2, 1. So, a snake belongs to the group of animals known as reptiles. And reptiles are a bit tricky because most of them lay eggs, but not all of them. So, if you did say egg laying, you got it right. This type of snake in particular does lay eggs, but not all reptiles lay eggs and not all snakes lay eggs. So, if you wrote something along those lines, you can actually give yourself a point as well. Great job. All right. Almost the last one. We've got 2 more to go, and this one is very, very tricky. This is another 3-point question. We've got a platypus. So, you can have 1 point if you can tell me what group this animal belongs to, another point if it's egg-laying or live birth, and a 3rd point if you remember the special word for what type of animal this is. Okay? So 3 points. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, so a platypus is warm-blooded, it has fur on its body, it provides milk to its young, it is a mammal. But unlike almost every other mammal other than the echidna, this one lays eggs. So it's part of a special group of mammals called the monotremes. And the only 2 monotremes are the platypus and the echidna, which is an egg-laying mammal. So 3 points if you got all of those correct. I'd be very impressed if you did. Great job. Alrighty, last but not least, another very tricky one for you. We do have a lizard. Now this type of lizard is called a blue-tongued lizard, and it belongs to the skink family. So, 1 point if you can guess if it's an amphibian, reptile, mammal, or bird, and another if you can guess if it gives birth to live young or lays eggs. And this might be one that the answer was in our reptiles video. 3, 2, 1. So a lizard is a reptile, but just as I mentioned before with our snake, reptiles don't always necessarily lay eggs, and in fact, a blue-tongued lizard is a type of reptile that gives birth to live young. So if you said reptile live birth, 2 points for that. Very, very good job. I hope you guys all did well with the game. Hope you had fun. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.